What if I told you that one of the most highly valued gaming conglomerates on Wall Street, possessing a massive market capitalization of over $30 billion, does not actually manufacture a single video game for the global consumer market, but instead operates a completely unregulated digital sweatshop, extracting millions of hours of completely uncompensated labor from the exhausted youth of the working class? Welcome to Money's Hidden Past. Rich people lied. We fact-checked. Today, we are stripping down the harsh structural mechanics of the Roblox digital economy and exposing exactly how a $30 billion empire profits aggressively on free child labor. When the traditional mainstream financial media discusses the absolute explosive growth of Roblox, they constantly frame the massive corporate entity as a benevolent educational sandbox pointing directly to its humble origins in the distant historical era of 2006, when it launched as a completely innocent three-dimensional physics simulator designed to teach children basic coding. The corporate board members and the highly paid public relations executives desperately want the exhausted working class parent to believe that the platform is simply a harmless digital playground, a safe structural environment where young creative minds can socialize with their friends and casually experiment with foundational software architecture in their free time. But the absolute unyielding mathematical reality of the modern Roblox ecosystem is significantly darker and completely structurally terrifying. Because behind the highly sanitized corporate marketing campaigns and the colorful blocky avatars lies the absolute most sophisticated and aggressive wealth extraction machine in the history of digital entertainment. The massive corporate entity operates entirely on a highly calculated psychological illusion, weaponizing the fundamental American dream of overnight sovereign wealth and aggressively marketing the platform as a digital utopian economy, where absolutely anyone can become a millionaire simply by coding a highly addictive blocky game in their physical childhood bedroom. They completely saturate the internet with highly polished promotional documentaries, highlighting a microscopic handful of teenage developers who successfully dropped out of high school, purchased luxury sports cars, and secured absolute total financial sovereignty before their 18th birthdays, convincing millions of young susceptible minds that they are simply one successful game away from total economic freedom. This aggressive corporate narrative acts as the absolute ultimate structural recruitment tool, convincing millions of underage children to voluntarily surrender their massive physical free time and completely dedicate thousands of hours to learning the proprietary Lua scripting language, desperately attempting to secure their own piece of the $30 billion financial pie. The children operate as entirely, completely independent digital contractors. They physically design the three-dimensional models. They write the complex back-end networking code. They manage the highly toxic community relations, and they aggressively market their digital products, performing the exact same high-level structural labor as a highly paid Silicon Valley software engineer. But because they are technically categorized as ordinary platform players, instead of official corporate employees, the massive corporate conglomerate completely mathematically bypasses every single traditional labor law. They absolutely do not provide basic structural health insurance or physical workplace protections. They pay absolutely zero minimum wage guarantees, and they offer completely zero structural job security if a massive physical corporation legally hired millions of underage children to work in a physical toy factory and forced them to physically manufacture millions of plastic toys for zero guaranteed baseline compensation. The federal government would immediately deploy armed tactical units to violently shut the operation down. But because the physical extraction occurs entirely inside a digital server room, it is aggressively celebrated by Wall Street. The absolute devastating truth of the digital marketplace is completely hidden from the exhausted child developer because the massive Roblox economy operates exactly like a brutal, unyielding late-stage capitalist monopoly where the absolute top 100 elite developers completely dominate the internal algorithmic discovery engines and physically capture the vast structural majority of all liquid capital flowing through the massive ecosystem. These elite legacy developers are absolutely not solitary teenagers working in their physical bedrooms. They are massive, highly organized corporate studios operating with millions of dollars in physical venture capital, employing massive teams of adult software engineers and aggressively manipulating the digital algorithms, making it absolutely mathematically impossible for an ordinary solo child developer to successfully compete. The vast overwhelming majority of the millions of young independent developers will spend hundreds of hours physically engineering a digital experience that generates a tiny handful of players, and they will completely fail to secure actual physical fiat currency for their massive unyielding labor. Instead, they are aggressively compensated in a completely closed-loop digital currency officially known as Robux. This structural mechanism represents the absolute most cynical financial architecture of the entire platform because Robux operates exactly like the highly toxic historical concept of corporate company scrip, a highly exploitative mechanism utilized by massive coal mining conglomerates in the late 19th century who aggressively paid their physically exhausted workers in fake corporate coins that could only be spent at the company store. When a child developer successfully convinces another player to spend capital inside their digital game, the corporate platform deposits completely arbitrary digital Robux directly into their virtual account. And the child developer is psychologically conditioned to view this digital token as absolute structural wealth, completely failing to realize that the massive corporate entity holds absolutely zero legal obligation to convert it. The child is structurally trapped inside the massive closed-loop digital matrix, forced to spend their hard-earned digital Robux directly back into the massive corporate ecosystem, purchasing highly overpriced digital cosmetic items for their blocky avatar, or spending it in other digital games, completely mathematically ensuring that the actual physical fiat currency never leaves the sovereign corporate treasury. But if the underage developer somehow miraculously defies the absolute unyielding mathematical odds and successfully accumulates a massive stockpile of digital Robux they actually want to convert into real physical cash, they are aggressively forced to navigate a highly punitive structural conversion mechanism, officially known by the corporate executives as the Developer Exchange Program, or DevEx. This is the exact moment the massive digital illusion completely violently shatters, and the absolute dark mathematical reality of the $30 billion empire is officially exposed because the corporate executives execute a massive, completely unyielding double taxation extraction designed specifically to aggressively drain the liquid wealth from the developer before it ever hits their physical bank account. When a consumer originally purchases the digital Robux utilizing actual physical fiat currency, the corporate platform mathematically values the digital token at roughly 1 physical penny per Robux, meaning if a consumer spends 100 real dollars, they receive roughly 10,000 digital Robux, establishing the baseline mathematical entry point for the entire sovereign ecosystem. When a player spends that 10,000 Robux inside a specific independent digital game, the corporate platform immediately executes the very first structural extraction. They violently confiscate a massive 30% internal marketplace processing fee, leaving the independent developer with only 7,000 digital Robux for their physical labor. But the absolute true unyielding financial devastation occurs during the final fiat conversion, because when the developer utilizes the official DevEx portal to successfully cash out their digital tokens, the corporate executives completely mathematically alter the underlying exchange rate, refusing to value the digital Robux at the exact same price they originally sold it to the consumer. Instead of paying the developer the structural equivalent of 1 penny per Robux, the DevEx program aggressively devalues the physical token to roughly $0.0035, meaning that original 10,000 Robux that cost the consumer 100 physical dollars is mathematically converted into a completely pathetic 24 physical dollars and 50 cents for the actual developer when you aggressively combine the massive internal 30% marketplace extraction with the completely skewed and highly punitive back-end fiat exchange rate disparity. You completely expose the absolute terrifying mathematical reality of the massive corporate conglomerate. The Roblox platform is structurally designed to permanently retain roughly 70 to 75% of the total fiat revenue. Let us completely contextualize the absolute staggering magnitude of this corporate extraction. When a traditional software developer creates an application for the massive Apple ecosystem, the unyielding global corporate monopoly extracts a highly controversial 30% marketplace fee, leaving the independent creator with exactly 70% of the total generated liquid capital. When a traditional digital creator uploads independent content to the highly profitable OnlyFans network, the centralized corporate entity completely mathematically extracts exactly 20% of the gross revenue, allowing the independent creator to physically retain a massive 80% of their absolute structural labor. But Roblox completely violently shatters these traditional historical corporate baselines. They completely reverse the mathematical architecture of the digital creator economy, extracting an absolute eye-watering 70 to 75% of the total physical fiat cash, and leaving the independent child developer with roughly 25% of the capital. They physically generated the mainstream media, and the massive Wall Street institutional asset managers completely ignore this dark math, because they are completely obsessed with the massive, predictable free cash flow the corporation generates, viewing the 75% extraction margin as a completely brilliant, unyielding corporate business model, and aggressively pumping the valuation of the massive structural empire directly into the physical stratosphere. The elite corporate executives completely justify this massive, unyielding financial extraction by claiming they must aggressively cover the massive structural overhead of the platform architecture, citing the highly expensive physical server infrastructure and the complex global payment processing fees, and completely insisting that maintaining a massive global three-dimensional digital network is financially devastating, but this corporate defensive narrative is an absolute, highly calculated structural lie. Because the corporate entity explicitly shifted the absolute heaviest financial burden directly onto the developer. They forced the independent creators to completely fund their own internal digital marketing campaigns, meaning the developer must spend their own hard-earned Robux just to secure visibility on the platform. They must physically pay to run sponsored advertisements inside the closed-loop corporate algorithmic matrix, completely bleeding their digital capital dry before they ever reach the required DevEx cash-out threshold, making the massive platform the absolute ultimate unyielding casino, where the house mathematically always wins. To successfully, completely qualify for the developer exchange program, the creator must hold 30,000 Robux, an absolute massive unyielding structural threshold that the vast, overwhelming majority of children will absolutely never reach. Meaning millions of young developers physically labor for hundreds of hours generating massive internal platform engagement, and ultimately completely forfeit their physical monetary value directly back to the corporate treasury. The massive corporate executives completely understand this unyielding psychological trap. They know that the underage demographic completely lacks the fundamental financial literacy to understand the dark math. The children simply see the digital numbers aggressively ticking up on their digital computer screens, completely failing to realize that their massive human thermodynamic energy is being mathematically siphoned. The corporation has successfully engineered the absolute ultimate structural digital sweatshop, disguised entirely as a completely innocent, colorful childhood educational playground, where millions of underage workers voluntarily compete against each other in a massive digital gladiator arena, completely desperate to secure a microscopic fraction of the massive, unyielding $30 billion pie. The corporate executives who physically operate this massive extraction machine are absolutely not benevolent digital educators or progressive Silicon Valley visionaries. They are highly ruthless digital industrialists, executing the absolute oldest financial playbook in human history, utilizing the massive uncompensated labor of the desperate working class to artificially inflate their corporate balance sheets. They completely insulate themselves from massive historical physical labor union organizing, because the millions of independent child developers are completely structurally isolated inside their physical bedrooms, unable to successfully collectively bargain against the massive, unyielding corporate monolith, and completely legally blocked from filing massive structural class action lawsuits due to predatory terms of service. When you aggressively pull back the colorful, blocky aesthetic of the massive digital empire, you absolutely do not find a completely utopian creator economy empowering the global youth. You find a massive cold, unyielding algorithmic corporate extraction engine designed specifically to permanently separate the thermodynamic value of human labor from the individual creator. The massive global financial elite desperately want you to completely ignore this architectural truth. They want you to continuously view the massive digital platform as a brilliant structural innovation and completely celebrate the microscopic handful of highly curated teenage success stories while completely intentionally ignoring the millions of exhausted children mathematically forced into free labor. They want you to blindly allow your own children to participate in the massive digital casino, completely assuming that learning the proprietary Lua scripting language is a highly valuable educational investment, while failing to realize that you're simply training the absolute next generation of completely compliant debt slaves who will willingly surrender 75% of their physical labor to a centralized corporate monopoly. If you want to completely successfully protect your children from the massive structural digital matrix, you must aggressively teach them the absolute fundamental unyielding reality of the fiat creator economy. You must prove to them that generating physical wealth requires operating on completely open independent protocols and aggressively avoiding highly centralized corporate ecosystems that extract massive unyielding rent to. When an entire generation of developers realizes they are being mathematically exploited and completely aggressively abandons the massively punitive centralized corporate architecture, the entire fragile, unyielding $30 billion digital illusion will completely violently collapse because the massive corporate executives absolutely cannot survive without the free thermodynamic labor of the youth. If this massive, comprehensive breakdown of the dark math behind the Roblox digital empire and the unyielding truth about the $30 billion child exploitation economy fired you up, about taking absolute total control of your permanent financial architecture, then do me a massive favor right now, smash that like button to let the algorithm know this factual historical conversation matters. Share this video with every friend and family member who needs to understand how the real physical and digital financial world operates. Let us keep exposing the true mechanics of wealth and power. I will catch you in the next one. where we break down the next hidden chapter in the long history of money and corporate authority. Until then, stay informed, stay skeptical, and remember that the greatest financial weapon in the modern global economy is completely refusing to surrender your physical thermodynamic labor to a massive digital sweatshop.